Birds are all around us. We see and hear them in the countryside, towns and cities across the world. Maybe we take their beauty and song for granted. But we shouldn't. Bird numbers are declining fast, just as we're beginning to discover so much more about them. Learning about the way they live together, communicate, and adapt. This series meets bird experts from across the world and reveals their latest extraordinary discoveries about these fascinating creatures. Rocks are revealing huge mysteries about the early evolution of all life on Earth. In 1861, a fossil of a bird-like dinosaur was described, having just been found in rocks in a quarry near Eichstätt in Germany. This was a flying creature that shared the Earth with dinosaurs and gave rise to the story of birds. It sparked a huge interest in this rock formation. The landscape has since been upturned with quarries to further discover this important moment in bird evolution.
Wow, ein wunderschöner Ammonit. Ein Tintenfisch, ein Haus von einem Tintenfisch. Wirklich super.
With each new fossil found, a better picture is emerging.
Wenn man sich das so vorstellt, vor 150 Millionen Jahren, man muss sich in die Zeit zurückversetzen. Da war am Himmel der Teufel los, da waren kleine Flugsaurier, da waren große Flugsaurier. Wir reden von 3, 4, 5 Meter, 6 Meter Spannweite, was die Flugsaurier da gehabt haben. Und zwischendrin vielleicht ein kleiner Vogel, ein Urvogel. Die Vorfahren von unseren modernen Vögeln heute. Und da gibt es nur eine Handvoll, es gibt nicht viele.
Roland Poschel has spent his lifetime excavating this quarry site. He chisels away at rocks from dawn to dusk, driven by his determination to find more and better fossils. Even as recently as 2021, he found a hugely significant fossil wing from one of these ancient creatures.
Das sind die ersten spektakulären Funde von den Vögeln, was es überhaupt gibt. Mehr gibt es nicht. Und das ist eine Faszination, wenn man sowas vielleicht findet. Das kann man sich, wenn man vogelähnliche Knochen findet, das kann sich ja gar keiner vorstellen, was das für Faszination ist, was das für Faszination für mich ist. Wenn man sowas findet, da stellen sich die ganzen Haare hoch. Das ist ein Wahnsinn ist das.
These ancient bird-like dinosaurs are rather different to the birds we see today.
Die Unterschiede dann am Schwanz hinten, die haben einen verknöcherten Schwanz gehabt mit vielen einzelnen Schwanzgliedern, wo die Federn rausgewachsen sind. Die Urvögel konnten damals nicht richtig fliegen wie moderne Vögel. Man muss sich das vorstellen, die konnten wirklich wahnsinnig gut gleiten wahrscheinlich, aber nicht so flattern. Dann hatten sie Krallen, wo sie auf die Bäume raufklettern konnten. Und dann hatten sie natürlich in der Schnauzenspitze richtige Zähne wie ein Dinosaurier.
Claws on their wings probably helped them climb up trees. They could jump off the branches and glide. But getting off the ground was probably still a challenge. Being related to the dinosaurs, the first birds continued the reptilian tradition of laying eggs. Without needing to carry into flight the heavy egg inside them, the birds could more easily lift into the air. The bats, which evolved from mammals 100 million years later, only carry one pup, and with some difficulty in late pregnancy, exposing them to easy predation. Birds, however, could lay as many as a dozen eggs, a number which they could not possibly carry into the air. True flight, rather than just gliding, required a particular wing shape to evolve. The wing had to be more aerodynamic and able to generate lift when air passed quickly over it. Running would help, but flapping the wing up and down accelerated the air over the wing even more. Just as this evolutionary ability to fly well was emerging, something dramatic happened.
Vor 66 Millionen Jahren passierte dann etwas wirklich Katastrophales, als ein riesiger Asteroid die Erde mit enormer Wucht getroffen hat. Und die Asche- und Staubwolken, die dabei hochgeschleudert wurden, verdunkelten die Atmosphäre über viele Jahre, was zum Aussterben dieser großen Dinosaurier führte, die uns so vertraut sind. Aber zugleich gab es auch globale Waldbrände, die einen Großteil der Vegetationsdecke der Erde zerstörten, was auch enorme Auswirkungen auf die Evolution der Vögel gehabt hatte.
The day the asteroid struck the Earth would not have been a good time to be around. We think that wildfires broke out all around the world due to heated ejecta raining back down on the Earth's surface. That initial firestorm was probably followed by an interval of darkness and protracted cold. Altogether, these features would have been devastating to the world's forests, as well as any groups of organisms like tree-dwelling birds that may have been dependent on those sorts of habitats.
Dr. Daniel Field works at the Earth Sciences Department at the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. He has been studying a key fossil that may help clarify how birds survived the fires and devastation.
It's a bird that we call Asteriornis, and it lived about 66.7 million years ago, just in the geological blink of an eye before the asteroid impact. This is an artist's reconstruction of what we think Asteriornis would have looked like. We think that the front part of the skull would have resembled the front part of the skull of living chicken-like birds. The back part of the skull might have been more similar to what we see in living duck-like birds. And that's very interesting because in the modern world, chicken-like birds and duck-like birds are one another's closest living relatives.
Asteriornis looked very like today's moorhen, which lives on the shores of lakes and rivers in Europe. Moorhens are omnivorous, eating weed, crustaceans, and creatures living in the mud. We think Asteriornis had a similar diet, which may have been why it was unaffected by the asteroid radiation which decimated so much life on Earth. This could have been one of the reasons why Asteriornis survived.
Asteriornis had relatively narrow, relatively long legs that characterize ground-dwelling birds in the present day. We think that this bird would have spent most of its time prowling shorelines in environments that would not have been devastated in the same way as forests would have been when the asteroid struck. It also was most likely a bird capable of flight. And that ability to fly and not be dependent upon forested environments may well have been very important features that favored the survivorship of some lineages of bird-like forms at the expense of others that went extinct. Following the age of dinosaurs, we move into what you can think of as the modern world, the age of mammals, or as I like to call it, the age of birds. So over the next 10 million years or so, we see the very early diversification event that gave rise to the early ancestors of the major groups of modern birds.
This diversification of birds is being studied by Dr. Gerald Meyer from the Senckenberg Research Institute and the Natural History Museum in Frankfurt. The museum contains an amazing number of mounted bird specimens from around the world, as well as collections of incredibly well-preserved fossils. Many of these fossils were found near the village of Messel, just outside Senckenberg. It's the former site of an oil shale mine. The land surface has been significantly disturbed, but paradoxically, if there had been no mine, the scientific value of the property would never have been discovered. The Messel pit is the richest site in the world for bird fossils dating from around 48 million years ago, a time when birds suddenly evolved into the many different shapes and sizes we might recognize today. The story of this quite sudden diversification of birds is hidden within this shale.
Vor 38 Millionen Jahren sah dieser Ort sehr anders aus, als er heute aussah. Es war viel wärmer damals. Es war ein mittelgroßer See, der von subtropischen Wäldern umstanden ist. Um uns sind wahrscheinlich zahlreiche Vögel über der Seeoberfläche geschwirrt auf der Suche nach Nahrung, aber auch die Wälder waren voll von einer reichhaltigen und exotischen Vogel- und Tierwelt. Es gab kleine Pferdevorfahren, die nur die Größe eines mittelgroßen Hundes hatten, daneben aber auch bizarre Vögel, flugunfähige Vögel, weil es damals zu dieser Zeit nur sehr kleine Landraubtiere gab, aber auch viele Baumvögel, die so heute nicht mehr vorkommen, zumindest nicht in Mitteleuropa. Und all diese ungewöhnlichen Tiergruppen sind damals in den See gefallen, wurden überliefert und werden von uns dort gefunden. Messel ist die bedeutendste Fundstelle für dieses Zeitalter weltweit und Vögel sind die häufigste Wirbeltiergruppe, die in Messel gefunden wird.
The Messel Pit was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1995, one of the few sites to have ever been placed on the list exclusively due to fossils. Many of the bird fossils are returned to the Senckenberg Museum for study.
So, wir haben in Messel eine unglaubliche Vielfalt an fossilen Vögeln, die bisher gefunden wurden. Und davon sind jetzt hier nur 4 Beispiele in dieser Schublade, die zu sehr unterschiedlichen ökologischen Formen und zu unterschiedlichen Ernährungsspezialisten gehören. Hier daneben ein besonders kleiner Vogel, das ist einer der kleinsten Vögel, die in Messel gefunden wurden. Und dieser Vogel ist spektakulär, weil er mit Mageninhalt überliefert ist, hier in dieser Gegend, der aus Pollenkörnern besteht. Und dieser Mageninhalt sagt uns, dass dieser Vogel Nektarfressen war, was man auch aufgrund dieses langen Schnabels erkennen kann. Und schließlich hier rechts ein Vogel, den es heute noch gibt, ein Segler mit charakteristischen langen und schlanken Flügeln, die einen sehr schnellen Flug ermöglichen und ein agiles Manövrieren in der Luft.
Narrow, set-back wings are still found on birds that need to fly fast and maneuver at high speed. There is perhaps no better example of this wing design than that found on the fastest living creatures in the air today, the falcons. Peregrine falcons are the feathered jet fighters of the air and can fly at up to 390 kilometers per hour. Just like a jet, the set-back, narrow, tilted wing of the falcon makes flight highly unstable, and thus they're able to tip left or right quickly at high speeds, helping it to catch other birds in the air. The falcon has followed very similar evolutionary paths to one of its favorite prey species, the pigeons. The arms race between peregrine and pigeon has pushed them both to fly faster and harder than ever before. So, not only has their flight evolved to catch prey, but also to avoid becoming it. But high-speed flight burns up a lot of energy. This is being studied by Professor Emily Shepherd and her team at Swansea University in the UK. Here, technology is being used to precisely measure the energetic cost of bird flight. A custom-built tunnel is able to recreate winds of up to 180 kilometers per hour, turning turbulent air into smooth, linear air, in which tame birds can fly.
The upshot is that with all of this equipment, to produce that nice smooth airflow, we end up with 20 tons of wind tunnel to try and understand the flight of a bird that weighs about the same as a can of soup.
Avian technician Kim Toogood has trained her pigeon Dougie to fly within the wind tunnel. She encourages Dougie to remain in the air whilst his flight is being recorded by a miniature data logger. She does this by rewarding him with delicious green peas. In the wild, pigeons can only fly for around 2.5 hours before their daily energy reserves are burnt up. Flapping flight like this is extremely exhausting and generates a lot of heat. Cuckoos seem to have found a solution to both staying cool and saving energy. They come to Europe to breed, but only stay a short time, as unusually they don't raise their own young. They leave the hard work of feeding to other unsuspecting birds, such as reed warblers or drongos. But on the migration up from Africa, cuckoos cross the hot, barren Sahara Desert. How do they keep cool on this no-stopping flight? A team from the British Trust for Ornithology in the UK are studying exactly this.
I'll just put my binoculars in.
They've discovered that cuckoos reach fantastic heights in the sky. But how do the team from the BTO know all this? The answer is they attach a tiny tag to the cuckoo.
So, yeah.
All very well, but first you've got to catch a cuckoo. How do you do that? Lee Barber and his colleague Stuart Brown are on a mission. They are in the River Avon Valley below the Malvern Hills in England. Stuart knows this patch well and has already heard a male cuckoo in this area a few days ago. Together, he and Lee have staked out the area to see where a good place might be to put up a net to catch the cuckoo.
Hope it's not this windy tomorrow morning.
Oh, yes. We won't be catching very much if it is.
Just two will do for starters.
There you go, sir.
The male cuckoos are calling in this area to attract the attention of a female cuckoo, who may call back to them. These reed beds attract breeding warblers, and they are the nests into which the female cuckoo aims to lay her egg. For once hatched, the young cuckoo ejects all the other eggs in the nest, so that it becomes the sole beneficiary of all the food the adult warblers will be returning with. Back to the trapping. With the nets up in what Lee and Stuart think will be the right place to catch a male cuckoo, they then place a decoy female cuckoo on a willow branch near the net.
That's it. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. That looks great, doesn't it? Looking forward to tomorrow now. Should be good.
In the very early morning, they will return here to open the net and switch on a recording of a female cuckoo. A full moon that night helps them to return to the net in silence.
Tell you what, I'll just turn it slightly so it's a nice silhouette. And this is the first thing the cuckoo sees when it flies over.
They switch on the call and quickly retreat to their cars. It's now a waiting game. The dawn appears. Still no visiting cuckoo. But Lee thinks one has just flown into the net.
Oh, really? Gonna have a look. Yeah, I'll have a look.
They must rush in to extract the cuckoo before it escapes.
Not what we wanted.
Not what we wanted.
No.
It's a blackbird, not a cuckoo.
But at least it's another capture of a bird. And this one was ringed, so you'll be able to tell me all about it. So that was a practice run.
They're disappointed. Catching a cuckoo is a real skill, but Lee and Stuart are experts. But the sun is now high, and the chances of this morning bringing success are getting smaller. All of a sudden, they hear not just one male cuckoo, but two.
Yeah, there was a cuckoo, and the cuckoo just flew along the river, actually, so not near the nets, but quite high, and then flew round to the right. Oh, yeah, it's calling, so that's definitely the male. That's very exciting. So he's calling towards the tape.
All eyes are on the net. One cuckoo is in. The second?
Our cuckoo's nicely in one end. Oh, and it's coming in again.
Lee decides to move at speed to catch the one already in the net. For a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush.
Brilliant. Oh, and it's ringed as well. Fantastic.
They bring the cuckoo back to the car for the delicate operation of attaching the tag. This bird will return to the Congo in August, and its tag will reveal the movements of its journey down to Africa.
And I'll just take my hand off its back, and it should sit there for a few seconds. There we go. That is fantastic. It flew off really strongly there, didn't it, Stuart? Yeah, really like that. That's what we do it for. That's fantastic.
Some of the cuckoos tagged by the BTO have done as many as 7 journeys back and forth, Africa to Europe, revealing a clear picture of their routes and timings. Furthermore, a sensor on the tag reveals the ambient temperature around the cuckoo. It's this information that tells the scientists the estimated height at which the bird is flying. Cuckoos fly right up to around 5,000 meters, where it's much cooler and the wind speed higher. We know from commercial airliners the time and energy-saving benefits of flying with strong tailwinds. So for the cuckoo, flying over the Sahara is easier if it flies at great height through the night. Another way birds conserve energy is by sleeping. The Max Planck Institute for Ornithology in Germany is one of the world's leading centers for the study of birds. Based at Seewiesen in Bavaria and established over 50 years ago, it continues to make the most amazing discoveries about birds. Dr. Niels Rattenberg is one of the Institute's key scientists. He's studying this issue of whether birds can sleep while flying or swimming. He recently discovered that in the Galapagos Islands, frigate birds could sleep whilst flying. Moreover, he discovered that unlike humans, birds can sleep for just a few seconds at a time. He knew that frigate birds slept while soaring and gliding in circles, but it remained a mystery to him as to whether sleep was possible while flapping. For how could some birds achieve continuous flight across the globe without sleep? The bar-tailed godwit undertakes one of the most remarkable migrations in the bird world. They usually travel over 11,500 kilometers in just 8 days, from Alaska to New Zealand, flapping most of the way.
For centuries, people have wondered if birds can sleep while flying. To address this question, you might think, well, let's just record what the godwits are doing during these long flights. The problem is that they're still a bit too small for our devices to be carried upon them during these long migrations. So we took another approach to examining whether sleep is possible during active locomotion, such as flapping flight, or in the case of the geese, in swimming.
In the wild, Niels Rattenberg and his team have often seen geese actively paddling with their eyes closed for a few seconds at a time. Niels and his team in Seewiesen wanted to know if they're sleeping in those moments.
To do this, we built a large, long aviary that floats on the lake, and we trained geese to follow us back and forth down the length of the aviary, with the hope that they would start to exhibit the sleep behavior that we had seen in the wild.
The geese have been imprinted on Dr. Andrea Ceriti and his assistant, Matt Zaharchuk, and so they will happily follow them for long periods of time.
The aviary is equipped with pairs of cameras that allow us to see both sides of the geese as they're swimming past the camera. And from this we can see if they have one eye closed, both eyes closed, or both eyes open. We're also measuring the motions of their feet with basically goose Fitbits, and from this we can see when they're paddling.
With the help of the cameras, accelerometers, and devices to monitor their brain, it's possible to know whether birds can sleep whilst moving their legs or wings. All the evidence is in the camera cards. As their eyelids close for a few moments at a time, it's clear to the scientists that they're paddling whilst asleep. This means that it's highly likely that birds can sleep whilst flapping too, which explains how the godwit can make such extraordinary journeys without stopping. Evolution has found other ways to save energy during flight, utilizing the Earth's energy rather than your own. This is an Andean condor. We can see that the takeoff by the condor requires an energetic, powered flapping. But what about after that? Condors are the subject of a fascinating study on soaring flight. They fly vast distances around the Andes Mountains of South America, easily covering 300 kilometers a day. Condors are the world's heaviest soaring bird and can weigh up to 15 kilograms. Like all birds, they must have strong but durable feathers to carry them. Professor Emily Shepherd is part of a team studying the soaring flight of condors.
So here we've got a primary feather, which is one of the flight feathers. Feathers are made of a type of keratin. So we know keratin. We have keratin in our nails, we have keratin in our hair, but feathers are made of a very particular type of keratin. It's called beta keratin. And it turns out that beta keratin is the toughest natural polymer that we know of in terms of the forces that it can withstand without fracturing. And it's also wonderfully flexible.
The size of the condor's feathers makes it easy to see the subtle features that generate lift.
It's got a nice camber on the front, so it's got this rounded edge. When the airflow meets the leading edge, it gets accelerated around this curved part. And that's really important because that means that the air traveling over the top of the feather is actually going faster than the air moving underneath it. And that means that you've got higher pressure below, lower pressure above, and that creates lift.
She and her team attached flight recorders onto the backs of Andean condors in Argentina. Back in her office in the United Kingdom, she can inspect every wing beat, twist and turn that the tag recorded.
Incredibly, on average, these birds flap for 1% of their flight time. They're basically hardly ever flapping. And of the time that they spend flapping, almost 70% of that is required for takeoff. So once they're up, they really hardly ever need to flap. And that just goes to show what exquisite capacities they have for finding and exploiting sources of rising air, which enable them to fly at such low cost.
Once the condors' journeys have been recorded, they can be displayed on a map to see precisely where they're going.
So I'm going to just walk you through one section of a flight that a bird did when it was commuting from its feeding areas back to the Andes at the end of the day. And it didn't flap once in this section. So you can see it's starting to glide down. It's losing altitude here. And then it drops onto this ridge. And the wind is being deflected upwards over this ridge, creating a region of rising air. And that allows the bird to soar along this ridge without losing altitude and without flapping. Then it gets to the end, and you see quite quickly it starts to turn in a thermal updraft. I've just coloured it according to the climb rate, and these warm colours tell us that it's actually climbing very rapidly. And the highest climb rates that we see in these sections are around 6 metres a second. And it might not sound like much, but when you consider that the average single-storey building is between 3 to 4.5 metres high, these birds can go basically 2 stories in a single second. And in the glide, for every metre of altitude lost, the condor is able to translate that into 16 metres of distance covered. It allows you to cover distance without having to turn the motors on.
So we now know that condors rise up and up at great speed without flapping, saving a vast amount of their own energy. But how do they actually do it? What is the energy they're using? Glider pilots harness the same energy. But like the condor flapping, the pilot still needs an engine to get airborne. These heavy machines can then switch off their engines and soar up and up for miles, using nothing but the power of rising hot air. They can travel for over 3,000 kilometers in mountainous areas. Pilot Chris Gill is in the Snowdonia Mountains in Wales. He's seeking the exposed areas of rock on the mountain below him. For rock will heat up faster than the surrounding land, and this heated air will break away, rising upwards. This is the energy on which both bird and plane can rise.
All these clouds around us, so particularly on the left side of us now, we've got these puffy clouds called cumulus. Those clouds only form when there's rising air that condenses into the cloud. So I know that underneath that cloud there will be some rising air. And we're also looking for birds as well. We have a lot of birds of prey in the area, and if we see any of those guys soaring and not flapping and going around in circles, then they are fantastic for marking where the thermals are. So we as glider pilots will absolutely go and join these birds because they're the experts. I can see now that some of the slopes have got direct sunlight on it, and that's really good. So that sun is really heating up that ground, and that will really encourage thermals to start popping. If we're searching for these thermals, a lot of the times we can bump into them almost without even realising. And you'll feel it before the instruments tell you that you're in lift. So you'll feel this acceleration from underneath. Almost imagine that you're getting into an elevator and you're going up. You feel that bit of acceleration as you start to go upwards. And we can feel a little bit of turbulence. Here we go. So we're just about to fly now right over the peak of Snowdon.
So large, soaring birds like condors are dependent on lift being made by rising air. Although it's a wonderfully efficient way to fly, not all birds can glide, and not all birds live in hilly or mountainous areas. Small birds use proportionately far more energy, even when resting, than larger birds. And so it's often best for them to fly a direct route rather than wait around for thermals. Large birds can use formation flight. This method of flight has been found to save energy. These are greylag geese. As a goose flaps, the tips of each wing leaves behind a strong vortex of rotating air. And so, by following each other, they can ride on the vortices of air left by the geese in front. Followers can save over 20% of their own energy. This formation flight can be done at any time, anywhere on the planet. From their earliest origins 150 million years ago to the huge variety of types of birds we see today, we're discovering the birds make a fascinating story. As seasons and temperatures change, being able to fly has enabled birds to cover vast distances, often at speed. As they find themselves on a rapidly changing planet, and even perhaps another mass extinction event, maybe some birds will survive. As we learn more about them, we're realizing that we should not take them for granted. Far from it. We should treasure them.